You think you understand people. You listen to their words, you trust their image, you believe their promises. But what if I told you that most of what you see is a performance, that people are not who they appear to be until a certain moment forces the truth out of them? The real problem is this: you are judging people at their best while they reveal themselves at their worst. And by the time you realize who they truly are, it's already too late. Look closely, not at how they speak to you, but at how they behave when you are no longer useful to them. This is where the illusion begins to crack. In the world understood by Niccolò Machiavelli, every man wears a mask suited to his audience. Before power, he becomes humble. Before opportunity, he becomes charming. Before equals, he becomes agreeable. But remove advantage from the situation, and something far more honest emerges. You see, most people are not kind. They are careful about who they need, careful about who can elevate them, careful about who holds influence over their future. And so they perform, they smile when it benefits them, they listen when it serves them, they respect when it protects them. But there is a fatal flaw in this performance. It cannot be maintained everywhere. There are always those who exist outside their circle of interest. The ones who cannot offer status, wealth, connections, or validation. The invisible people in their world. And this is where truth reveals itself without permission. Watch how they speak to the waiter who made a small mistake. Watch the shift in their tone, the impatience in their voice, the subtle disrespect they no longer feel the need to hide. Observe how quickly courtesy disappears when there is nothing to gain. It is not the mistake that triggers their reaction. It is the absence of consequence, because in that moment, they believe their behavior carries no cost, no judgment, no loss, and so they act freely. That freedom exposes them. A man who is truly disciplined in character does not adjust his respect based on status. He does not calculate kindness like a transaction. His behavior remains consistent because it is not driven by gain. It is driven by principle. But this kind of man is rare. Far more common is the individual who divides the world into two categories, those above him and those beneath him. To those above, he offers admiration. To those beneath, he offers indifference or worse, contempt. And this division is not accidental. It is strategic. He understands that respect can be a currency, and like any currency, he spends it where it brings a return. But what he fails to realize is that in doing so, he reveals the architecture of his character, because a man who respects only power does not believe in dignity. He believes in hierarchy, and in his mind, your worth is not defined by who you are, but by where you stand. Today, you may stand beside him, tomorrow you may fall below him, and when that happens, the version of him you once knew will vanish without hesitation. This is why Machiavelli observed not the words of men, but their patterns, because words can be rehearsed. Behavior cannot, at least not consistently. Sooner or later, everyone relaxes. Everyone lets their guard down. Everyone encounters a moment where they believe their actions carry no consequence. And in that moment, their true nature surfaces. It is subtle, almost unnoticeable to the untrained eye, a dismissive glance, a sharp tone, a lack of patience, a refusal to acknowledge someone they deem unimportant. These are not accidents, these are confessions. Confessions of how they see the world, confessions of how they assign value to human beings, confessions of how they will treat anyone the moment power shifts in their favor. You must understand this clearly. How someone treats the powerless is not a reflection of the powerless. It is a reflection of them. It tells you everything about what they would become if given absolute authority. Because power does not corrupt, it reveals. And the man who shows quiet disrespect in small moments is rehearsing for greater displays when the stakes are higher and the consequences are lower. So observe carefully, because in a world where everyone is trying to impress those above them, the truth is always revealed in how they treat those below them. Pay attention to the moment a man is denied. Not when life is flowing in his favor, not when doors open easily and outcomes bend to his will. Anyone can appear composed when reality agrees with them. Anyone can wear the mask of patience when there is nothing testing it. But the moment desire is interrupted, the moment control slips, the moment something he believes he deserves is taken away or refused, this is where truth begins to surface. In the observations of Niccolò Machiavelli, men are not defined by how they pursue power, but by how they react when it is denied to them. Because denial does something dangerous. It strips away illusion. A man may believe himself to be disciplined, rational, even virtuous, but these are often identities built under favorable conditions. They are fragile constructions, dependent on cooperation from the world around him. When the world stops cooperating, the construction begins to shake. Watch closely. The first crack appears in the form of frustration. A subtle shift in tone, a tightening of the jaw, a change in posture. This is the moment where expectation collides with reality. What follows next determines everything. Some men pause, they absorb the denial, they adjust. There is control in them, a restraint that prevents impulse from taking over. These men are dangerous in a calculated way because they do not reveal themselves easily. They retreat, they rethink, and they return stronger. But most men do not possess this discipline. Instead, denial awakens something far more primitive: entitlement. A belief that they were owed a certain outcome, that reality has somehow wronged them, that the refusal is not circumstance, but injustice. And once a man convinces himself he has been wronged, he begins to justify his reaction. Frustration evolves into anger. Anger seeks expression, and expression reveals character. You will see it in the way he speaks, sharper now, less controlled. You will hear it in the excuses he makes, the blame he shifts, the subtle ways he avoids responsibility. Or perhaps he does not explode outwardly. Perhaps he retreats into silence. But even silence can be deceptive. Because behind that silence, resentment begins to grow, and resentment is patient. It waits for opportunity. It waits for leverage. It waits for a moment where the balance of power shifts just enough for him to act without consequence. This is what makes denial so revealing. It shows you not only how a man handles loss, but how he prepares for revenge. A man who cannot accept denial with clarity will always seek to regain control by other means: manipulation, deception, subtle coercion. He may smile again, he may appear calm again, but something has changed beneath the surface. Because now he is no longer interacting with you from a place of stability. He is interacting from a place of wounded pride. And wounded pride is unpredictable. Machiavelli understood this deeply. He knew that men are driven not just by ambition, but by emotion, especially the emotion of being denied. It is in this state that they make their most revealing decisions. A disciplined man sees denial as information, a signal to adjust strategy, to reconsider approach, to refine his actions. But a weak man sees denial as an attack on his identity. And once identity is threatened, logic disappears. Now he must prove something. Now he must restore his sense of control. Now he must show, if only to himself, that he is not powerless, and in doing so, he exposes exactly how far he is willing to go to get what he wants. This is why you must never ignore how someone reacts when they don't get their way, because sooner or later, there will come a time when what they want conflicts with you, and in that moment, the same reaction you once observed will return. Only this time, you will be at the center of it. Now, we move into the place where truth is no longer performed, but lived. A place where there is no audience, no applause, no judgment, no consequence. This is where a man meets himself without witnesses, and in the philosophy observed by Niccolò Machiavelli, this is the only place where character can be measured without distortion. Because everywhere else is theater, in public a man is guided by expectation. He says what is acceptable. He does what is rewarded. He shapes himself according to the eyes watching him. His morality becomes flexible, adapting to the environment, bending to perception. But remove the audience and something changes. The performance ends. There are no longer any incentives to appear honorable. No pressure to maintain reputation. No need to impress, persuade, or protect an image. And so, the question becomes dangerously simple. Who is he when nothing is at stake? This is the shadow test. It does not ask what a man says. It does not care what he promises. It does not measure what he displays. It observes what he does when he believes his actions will never be seen. Because it is in these moments that intention is revealed without interference, consider this carefully. A man stands at a crossroads. One path is honest but difficult. The other is deceptive but easy. In public, he chooses honesty because he must. Because deviation would cost him reputation, trust, opportunity. But in private, there is no cost. No one will know. No one will question him. No one will hold him accountable. And so he decides based on something far more honest than reputation. He decides based on desire. This decision, invisible to the world, becomes a window into his true nature, because when consequence disappears, only intention remains. Does he still choose discipline when indulgence is safer? Does he maintain loyalty when betrayal offers advantage? Does he restrain himself when excess would go unnoticed? Or does he become someone else entirely? This is where many men fracture, not publicly, but internally. They live two lives, one crafted for the world to admire, and another hidden in the dark, where rules no longer apply. And the danger of this duality is not immediate. It does not reveal itself in a single, dramatic moment. It grows quietly. Every small compromise made in private becomes easier to repeat. Every hidden lie becomes simpler to justify. Every unnoticed betrayal becomes part of a pattern. Over time, the line between who they pretend to be and who they truly are begins to blur, until, eventually, the private self becomes dominant. And when that happens, the mask worn in public is no longer sustainable. Because maintaining an illusion requires effort, it requires consistency, it requires alignment between action and appearance. But a man who lives in contradiction cannot maintain that alignment forever. Sooner or later, the habits formed in secrecy begin to leak into reality. A careless decision, a misplaced trust, a moment of overconfidence, and suddenly what was hidden becomes visible. This is why Machiavelli did not trust appearances. He understood that reputation is often a carefully constructed illusion. maintained through observation and fear of consequence. But remove those conditions and the illusion dissolves. This is also why small actions matter. Most people dismiss them. They believe that minor dishonesty, quiet manipulation, or unseen indulgence is insignificant. But these are not isolated acts. They are signals of how a person negotiates with themselves when no one else is involved. And a man who consistently chooses the easier, darker path in private is not preparing for greatness. He is conditioning himself for collapse. Because character is not built in grand moments, it is built in repetition. In the quiet decisions, no one applauds. In the discipline, no one rewards. In the restraint, no one enforces. This is where integrity is either forged or abandoned. And once abandoned, it does not return easily. A man who betrays his own standards in the dark will eventually betray others in the light. Not because he intends to, but because he has trained himself to justify it. He has normalized the behavior. He has removed the resistance, and without resistance, there is no barrier left. So when you observe someone, do not be distracted by how they present themselves when the world is watching. Instead, ask a far more dangerous question. What would this person do if they were certain no one would ever find out? Because whatever that answer is, that is who they truly are. There comes a moment in every man's life when he can no longer pretend, not because he chooses honesty, but because he no longer has the strength to maintain the illusion. This is the moment of collapse. In the ruthless observations of Niccolò Machiavelli, deception is not only common, it is necessary. Men construct identities not to express truth, but to navigate power, to secure advantage, to control perception. And for a time it works. A man can present himself as disciplined while hiding chaos within. He can speak of loyalty while quietly betraying others. He can appear calm while being ruled by impulse. The mask holds because the environment allows it, because circumstances are favorable, because nothing has yet forced him into a position where maintaining the illusion becomes too costly. But life does not remain stable. Pressure builds, and pressure is not gentle. It does not negotiate. It does not care about the image a man has created for himself. It exposes. Watch what happens when a man is placed under sustained stress. When time begins to work against him. When power begins to slip from his control. When loss enters his life without permission. When conflict surrounds him from all sides. These are not ordinary moments. These are moments of revelation. Because under pressure, a man cannot carefully select his responses. He cannot rehearse his words. He cannot maintain perfect control over his behavior. The mind becomes overwhelmed. The body reacts faster than thought. And in that space, the truth escapes. A man who claimed patience becomes irritable. A man who preached loyalty becomes self-serving. A man who appeared confident becomes desperate. This is not transformation, this is exposure. The qualities revealed under pressure were always present. They were simply hidden beneath layers of control, convenience, and favorable conditions. Machiavelli understood that stability is the greatest ally of deception. When life is predictable, a man has the luxury of choosing how he appears. He can filter his reactions. He can construct a version of himself that aligns with what the world expects to see. But instability removes that luxury. Now reactions are immediate, decisions are urgent. There is no time to calculate how one should appear, only time to act. And action, when stripped of calculation, is pure. It comes directly from instinct, from habit, from the deepest part of a man's nature. This is why pressure is the ultimate test, not because it changes people, but because it removes their ability to hide. Consider this carefully. A man may spend years building a reputation. He may convince others, and even himself, that he is honorable, disciplined, in control. But reputation is fragile. It is built on perception, not proof, and perception can be maintained only as long as behavior remains consistent. The moment pressure disrupts that consistency, the illusion begins to fracture. At first, it is subtle, a small contradiction, a reaction that feels slightly out of place, something that does not align with the image he has projected. Most people ignore this, they rationalize it, they assume it is temporary, but pressure does not disappear after one moment. It lingers, it intensifies, it returns again and again, each time demanding more from the individual, and with each return the mask weakens, cracks widen, control slips. The effort required to maintain the illusion becomes exhausting, until eventually it breaks completely, and when it does, what emerges is not a new version of the man, but the original one, the one that existed before the performance began. This is why some people shock you, not because they changed overnight, but because you were introduced to a version of them that was never real to begin with. The calm friend who becomes volatile under stress, the loyal partner who becomes opportunistic under pressure, the disciplined individual who collapses into chaos when control is lost. These are not sudden transformations. They are delayed revelations. Machiavelli would argue that if you wish to understand a man, you must not study him in comfort. You must observe him in conflict, in loss, in moments where the cost of maintaining his image outweighs the benefit. Because only then will you see what he truly prioritizes. Only then will you understand what he is willing to sacrifice. Principles, loyalty, integrity, when survival, power, or desire is at stake. And once you see this, you cannot unsee it. The mask, once broken, can never be fully restored, because now you know. Now you have witnessed the raw, unfiltered version of that person, not the version crafted for acceptance, but the version revealed by necessity. And that version is the only one that has ever truly existed, waiting patiently beneath the surface for the moment when it no longer had to hide in the end. The greatest mistake you can make is believing that people are who they claim to be. Words are crafted, images are controlled, personalities are adjusted depending on who is watching. But truth does not live in performance, it lives in patterns. The way a person treats those beneath them reveals their values. The way they react when denied reveals their discipline. The way they behave in private reveals their integrity. And the way they collapse under pressure reveals their true nature. These are not random moments, they are windows. Windows into a reality most people try to hide not from others, but from themselves. This is what Niccolò Machiavelli understood better than most. That human nature is not defined by ideals, but by actions taken when ideals are no longer convenient. And once you begin to see this, everything changes. You stop listening to promises. You stop being impressed by appearances. You stop trusting what is said without question. Instead, you observe, you wait. You study behavior when it is unguarded, when it is uncomfortable, when it is real. Because in a world where everyone is trying to be seen a certain way, very few can maintain that illusion forever. Sooner or later, everyone reveals themselves, not intentionally, not dramatically, but inevitably.